So the Five Realms takes place in a place called Midland, which has been mapped out for the story, and I thought it would be fun. I mean, we'll see if it's fun. To kind of take a walk through Midland by way of the map and kind of drawing on it and everything, to give you some kind of behind the scenes or like extra context of the world in which this is set. Before we do that, I think everybody would be entertained by having a look at the first version of this map that I drew, which looks like this. What a treasure. It belongs in a museum somewhere. But seriously, I'm glad it doesn't look like this, and I'm glad that it was just the means to an end, because it would be kind of a bummer to have this be the thing that was in the story. And I think it took 5 revisions to get from this to give my mom something that she could take and turn into something cool, which she changed it from this to this, which obviously brings the world to life and in perspective in like a whole different way. So this is Midland. I'll get out my my little drawing tools here so I can scribble on it like some kind of football guy. This is Midland. The idea, I wanted like a classic fantasy world. That was the kind of thing that I always really enjoyed reading. And so I wanted like all the terrain that there was. Like I wanted options for like whatever journeys and quests were taken, that they would all happen over like, you know, all the things, like the plains, the woods, the rivers, the mountains, the seas, all of it. Like I wanted all of it. And so you saw my kind of crappy first attempt at that, and then it finally turned into something really awesome. So let's see, context for the landscape. We'll start kind of up here at the top. This mountain range up here is called the Peak Mountains in the book, comprised of the upper peaks up here and the lower peaks down here. There's some kind of hidden history to the upper peaks that doesn't kind of rear its head until maybe sometime in book 2. And then the lower peaks feature right away with this town here that we'll get to later. And then you've got kind of the forest areas, aptly named by their cardinal directions, which is incredibly clever of me, I know. The Westwood right here is kind of the most mysterious, and no map could really do justice to how vast it is. This represents something that like the people have largely not explored and not really experienced, as evidenced by the only towns that are around it is this one kind of right inside, and then this other one kind of between the edge and the mountains over here. And so it's a largely unexplored territory, and it's kind of a commonly known thing around Midland that you could easily get lost, and so most people don't really try very hard. The Eastwood over here is a little bit less played. Honestly, these 2 towns that are in here are just meant to be small kind of forest towns, and if I'm honest, they were means to an end, a place to reference, you know, where some things happen, and there's something, you know, that goes on right here between these 2 towns at one point that's important. And so setting up kind of geographically where those were is kind of the role that the Eastwood plays. And then down here, the Southwood down here at the bottom is kind of the more traveled of all the wooded areas. It's a place commonly used for like, you know, hunting and camping and that sort of thing by people in proximity in the capital here and these other small towns. The swamp here is kind of another somewhat mysterious area. It's kind of got a negative connotation to it. Like there's a lot of like, it's mysterious, but in like I don't want to go there kind of way, which reveals itself later to some extent. And then the sea down here is kind of the biggest source of unknown in the story. I knew I wanted to feature this somehow, and this has ended up being even more so than the Westwood. It's just kind of, if this map is representative of something that people in Midland would hold, this kind of represents the extent of what they know. So people, you know, can and have and do venture out across the sea to try and, you know, map it or explore it or, you know, find things or whatever, and a lot of them never come back. There's a lot of wild stories around it that come up throughout the story as well. So that's kind of the biggest question mark in the world is, I would say, first the Great Sea, second the Westwood in terms of largeness, and then third would be right here the Tangle, which is this mass of briars that kids in neighboring towns and especially here in Forthwind have kind of made sport of seeing, like, if somebody could be the first one to kind of crack the code of like how can they get in there and see what, if anything, is inside. And so far no one's been able to do so. So that's kind of another big question mark. It's the ugliest question mark ever. And then on to the towns and everything else. I liked the idea of there being kind of like a hub, like a capital place where most of the things happen, and then it's supported by smaller towns. That's what Forthwind is. It's the capital, nestled here in a place that's supposed to be an obvious choice because it's easily defensible with it being surrounded by, you got mountains on this side, forest, river here, lake here. Lots of and it's got, of course, a city wall and a gate and a bridge here that they've built across it. Obvious choice for a city. This big cone here represents the spire, which is like the tower where all the kind of would-be mages would kind of come to train and learn, and where all the expert mages live. The kind of governing force of Midland kind of resides there. And then this is kind of the main hub center of like commerce and trade, and there's a lot going on in the city. A lot of people live there. Trade comes in and out of there, that sort of thing. As far as the rest of the towns, moving its way around, Banbury here on the plains is kind of like a horse town. It's kind of where the people kind of raise and breed horses, because obviously, trying to journey anywhere on the land here is probably a horse venture for the most part. So that's kind of how they roll. Brighton over here is like a small fishing town because of its proximity to the lake and the Broad River up here. You got poor Torwell and Bremen up here that they're little means to an end towns, just meant to be not highly populated kind of forest towns here in the Eastwood. Starward up here is supposed to be small and remote because of its location kind of in the mountains here. Pretty simple village, and some drama kind of unfolds here early in the story, so it features there. Coming over here to Silverfall is another small town whose claim to fame is that the commander of the army here in Forthwind, Rand, he is from this town. So this is kind of their claim to fame of being on the map for they're like, yeah, we're a small town, but Rand's from here, so that's cool. Cornwall here at the edge of the Westwood is the only town that's kind of actually settled inside it, but it's not far inside its borders. That doesn't make its appearance till later in the arc of the trilogy. And then Coventry is maybe mentioned in all three books. I can't remember, but mentioned in passing at first, takes a bigger role later. And then, fun fact, there's a big conflict that happens in the story that's called the Mage War that I don't really map out, but I describe kind of what happens. It revolves around some conflict that kind of brews in this area and kind of proceeds up through here and then ends kind of culminates in this area. And I won't say much more about it, but fun fact, that's kind of the path it takes, and it kind of lands near where Coventry would eventually be, even though that's not really related. It's probably more over here, but it's closer to Coventry than anything else. And then coming all the way down to Seaway, this town down here is exactly what it sounds like. It's kind of the only bridge to actually get to the Great Sea. It's the only, because of all these cliffs here that are kind of, and the falls that are kind of impassable. Like if you want to get to Seaway, you kind of got to make your way across the river, through the woods, through the swamp, past Grandma's house, and over here to Seaway. And so this is kind of it's the big version of what Brighton is up here. It's kind of the main hub for fishing and all of that. And it's boats, boat builders, ship builders. It's kind of a ramshackle place, but it's large. It's like the second largest city in Midland aside from Forthwind, the capital. A lot of people, once they get there, they kind of settle there. And then, yeah, all the any and all adventuring types and expeditions all going for the sea to try and map it or explore something or whatever, they kind of all go in and out of Seaway. And yeah, that's the world. I really can't say enough about how well that my mom Cynthia brought this to life, like with her mad artist skills, like even with the little ads, like the compass rose here and the funky little sea monster that you always see on like old maps and stuff. So hopefully that sheds some light on the world of Midland and makes it even a little bit more interesting on the level as you read. And that's some behind the scenes look into it, and hopefully we'll see you in there.